Hi everyone, glad you're back. Today I'm going to show you the event-based system that builds parallel AI. In the last video we introduced parallel AI and we said that every agent in parallel AI is triggered by an event, right? One or more events. In this video I want to show you how we can model these events with the so-called event graphs and what we can do with these events. So let's start where we left off in the last video. Last time I had an agent. Let me recreate it here. This is the routing system agent we talked about. When we drag and drop the routing agent, an agent in general, in this decision network, well, whatever we have in this decision network can be simulated. So when we click run, we're going to simulate this agent, and that means that we are going to trigger the events that in turn trigger the actions of the agent. So to create this event-based system, we can double-click on the agent, and we're going to open another window, the event graph that is behind here. Let me bring it up. So this is the event graph of the agent. It's similar to the previous one, but here we're going to use this space here to define the connections, to define the connection between blocks that are the graph itself. The graph represents basically the sequence of actions that are triggered by an event. So let's go around the window just super quickly. So here you see that we have basically the workspace. This shows how the components of the agent, right? You may think of an agent as if you're familiar with object-oriented, as a class, and the components are the members of the class, right? So for example, a class can be a car, and the components are the mirror or the beams and so on. Well, we have an agent and its members are the components. And in this particular case, since we are talking about a routing system, we have these components here, routing component and route component. And under routing component, we have location component and fleet component. Well, what are these things? Well, the location component is basically the component is describing the locations that we want to visit. The fleet component, it describes the fleet and the vehicles that we want to send out to visit the locations, and the route component is basically the component that describes the actual routes that we want to optimize. Now you see that location and fleet are under routing component, while a route component is not under routing component. So why is that? We must say that every agent that goes into the decision network, so in this case, let's bring it back, the routing system goes into the decision network. Every such component has a base component, has a base a parent component. In this case, it's the routing component. Whatever we have under the base parent component, so location and fleet in this case, are all the components of the agent that can interact with the environment. So in this case, location, well, the locations are part of the environment because we want to visit the locations. The fleet component is part of the environment. There are the actual vehicles that are going around to reach the locations, while the route component is not part of the environment. It's a semantic entity that is part of the agent, but it doesn't interact with the environment, right? So you see here, again, we have three components, location, fleet, and route, and these are all under the route component. Route component is the parent, the root component of the routing system agent. Okay, let's continue with this area here. Here we have variables. In this space here, we can create new variables. I'm going to show you in a little bit. And then let me move it on the left. Here we have the details panel again, like in the main window where we can check some information. And here routing system decision maker. Here we are going to be able to select a decision maker. Basically, the decision maker is the brain of the agent, and we're gonna see how to do that in later videos. So let's start by creating a simple event graph. An event graph is a graph of actions that are triggered by events. So I right click here and you see that now I have a menu and I have add event, add function, fleet, location. These are all events and blocks that can be used in an event graph. So for example, add event, we have three main events: begin simulation, post simulation, pre simulation. It's easy to understand. Begin simulation is an event that is triggered when we start simulation, pre and post when right before starting the simulation and right after the simulation is finished. So let's start with begin simulation event. So this block here is going to be triggered just when we click the simulation button on the main window, right? Let's see what we can do. Well, we can, for example, add a function that says print string, right? So when this is triggered, we are going to print the string. So now you see that we have an input wire and we have an output one. Here we can chain up different blocks, meaning that we can execute different actions in chaining one after the other. So what do we have? We have a string value that is going to be read by this block when this block is triggered. And for the string value, we can use a variable. So I can say my var, right? I can create a new variable. And you see, I can drag and drop this variable, and I can connect this variable to this socket here, right? Now, you see that when I click on the variable, I can select the type of variable. In this case, I'm going to say that this variable is a string variable because this block wants a string value, right? Let me say this is my variable. Perfect. So the print string block, what it does, simply it logs a string, and it logs a string into the details panel here, right? So let's just run the simple example. I click on run. It runs, and you see the run simulation. This is my variable. So what happens is that this when I click run, this triggered this block here. The block triggered this print string, and the print string asks for on the input socket what is the value, and the value was given by the variable my var. Very good. But let's go ahead and let's see how the other two events, right? So here we have these blocks here. So I'm going to add a pre-simulation event as well, and I'm going to add a post-simulation event. Very good. And now we can do the same, right? So we can add another string, print string. Okay, very good. And then we can add another string again, print string, such this. And then we can say, we can add something more interesting, right? We can say we can add a wait block. A wait block basically is a block that when it gets triggered, it waits for a certain time that we can specify, and then it continues execution, right? So let's add yet another print string here, something like this, right? And let me connect these blocks here. So now let's specify for the wait block the duration of the wait. And go ahead, the wait block. We can specify the duration of this socket here. So we're going to create a duration variable, duration, like that. Very good. We can put it here. Connect the duration value to the duration block. The duration is specified, if we see here, right? The wait waits for the specified duration in seconds before continuing execution. So we can specify the number of second duration. In our case, is a float value, and we can say that we're going to wait for, let's say, 2 seconds, right, before continuing. Here, again, we have the variable. In this case, I'm going to change the string. I'm going to say before wait, okay. And then I'm going to create another variable. Let's call it var2, something like this. And we're going to use this variable here, right? And I'm going to say this is another string variable. Say this is after wait. Very good. And now, just for completeness here, we're going to create other two variables, var1 and var3, something like this. And we can put variable 1 here. We're going to connect to the string, and var3 we're going to connect to the string as well, something like so. And then var1 we say is a string variable, and say this is pre-simulation, and then we're going to say that this is instead post-simulation. post simulation. Very good. So what are we expecting to see when we click the simulation? Well, when we click simulation, we're going to see that we are going to trigger a pre-simulation event, and the event is going to trigger this block. It's going to read the variable, it's going to print pre-simulation, and then it's going to the system is going to trigger a simulation block. It's going to go here, it's going to print this value here, which is before wait. Then it's going to go on to the next block, which is the wait block, and it's going to print something, wait for the duration specified by this variable, 2 seconds, and then it's gonna go ahead on the print string block and print this is after wait. Finally, once this event is completed, we're gonna trigger the post simulation event that is gonna print the last variable, post simulation. This is post simulation. Very good. So now let's go ahead and run. Actually, let's do this. Let's clear the details panel. Let's run. I want to really click here and see how this progresses. So see, now we are waiting for 2 seconds, and then it continues and it finished everything, right? And let's see the result. We have run pre-simulation, before wait. This is after wait, and then post-simulation. So this was written in pre-simulation, this is post-simulation, and this is before wait, and this is after wait. Perfect. So you see that now we were able to create a set of events that are interacting with the agent. So the agent is basically reacting to some inputs that it receives. And how are you going to use these events? Well, for example, we can use when we are simulating, we can use the pre-simulation event to set up some of the components of the agent, right? So in this case, we have location and fleet component, and we can use the pre-simulation event to set them up. We can set up the locations, we can set up the fleet, and so on. Then we can use a simulation event to simulate the agent. And then finally, we can use a post-simulation event to read from the components. So for example, we can use pre-simulation to set location and fleet, and we can use the post-simulation event to retrieve the route component and print the actual routes on the map. But this is all the time I have for this part here. In the next video, I'm going to show you what these components are, how we can set them up, how we can use some other blocks to actually set up these components, for example, by clicking locations on a map and then adding those locations into the location component and so on. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, just go on our webpage, parallel.ai. You can request early access to the pre-alpha version. This is the pre-alpha version, and you can download it, and you can try it yourself to play with these blocks here and the event graph, and then later on with the decision maker. And see that now you can do all sorts of combinations. You can wait, print, you can do all sorts of things here. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.